Welcome. Enjoy the video. Subscribe and turn on notifications. I woke up at 4:35 a.m., 15 minutes before my alarm, same as yesterday. Same as every day. The ceiling fan spun lazily above, creating shadows that danced across the room. Next to me, Danielle lay perfectly still. Too still. She was awake, just pretending not to be. Like always. My joints creaked as I eased out of bed, careful not to disturb her performance. The bathroom tiles sent chills through my feet as I went through my morning routine. Brush teeth, wash face, avoid my reflection. Down the hallway, I peeked into Aurora's room. The walls were plastered with posters of athletes she used to proudly say reminded her of me. Now they just stared back accusingly. My little firecracker slept tangled in her sheets, one leg hanging off the bed. Soccer cleats scattered across the floor. Tomorrow's tournament she hadn't bothered inviting me to. In the kitchen, I pulled out eggs and bread. The silence pressed in around me as I cooked, broken only by the sizzle of breakfast and the coffee maker's gurgle. 3 plates, 3 perfectly folded omelets. 2 would go cold, scraped into the trash when I got home. Danielle's heels clicked against the hardwood as she emerged, already dressed in one of her power suits. She didn't look at me, just grabbed her travel mug. "Made you breakfast," I said to her back. "I have an early meeting." The front door closed behind her. The rest of my morning ritual felt like going through the motions. Pack lunch, put on my uniform, lace up steel-toed boots that used to represent honest work. Now they just felt heavy. I remembered the pride I once took in this job, providing for my family, benefits, pension, stability. Then came that day at Aurora's game. Some suit in pressed khakis sneering, "Garbage man," to his buddy. Danielle's shoulders tensing, her smile becoming plastic. Aurora's face burning red as she struck out, refusing to look at me in the stands. The kitchen clock read 5:30 a.m. Time to head out. I still kissed Danielle's cheek goodbye every morning, even though she was long gone. Old habits die hard, just like the love that used to fill this house. Life was repetitive, every day the same, until the day I started to notice some changes. On Friday, I slouched deeper into my recliner, the leather creaking under my weight. The house felt bigger, emptier with each passing minute. A yellow sticky note on the fridge caught my eye. Aurora's messy scrawl about staying at her friend's place tonight. Next to it, Danielle's precise handwriting on crisp, white paper detailed her important work function. The whiskey bottle sat on the side table, my only companion for the evening. 1 glass turned to 3, then 4. The TV droned on. But I couldn't focus on anything except the growing hollowness in my chest. Each sip burned less than the last, numbing the edges of my thoughts. Hours ticked by. The ice in my glass had long melted when I heard the front door click open. Danielle's heels clicked against the hardwood floor, each step precise and measured. She emerged into the living room, wrapped in that new designer blazer she'd bought last week. Her makeup was flawless, hair styled just so, not a single strand daring to rebel against her control. "You're still up." Her voice carried that familiar edge, sharp enough to cut through my whiskey haze. I raised my glass in a mock toast. Someone had to keep the furniture company. Her nose wrinkled at the sight of the bottle. "How much have you had?" "Not enough to forget I'm sitting here alone on a Friday night." She set her purse down with more force than necessary. "Don't start, Bill. I told you about this function weeks ago." "Right, the function. With your work friends, the ones who'd never set foot in our neighborhood." "I'm not doing this with you right now." She straightened her blazer, a gesture I'd seen countless times. "You're drunk, and you're being ridiculous. Take the couch tonight." For once, I didn't have the energy to push back, to remind her this was our home, our life, or what remained of it. I just watched her climb the stairs, each step deliberate and distant, like everything else about her these days. The love we'd built, the warmth we once shared, felt buried under years of pristine blazes and cold Friday nights. The sound of hushed voices filtered through the walls, pulling me from sleep earlier than usual. My first instinct was to roll over and catch a few more minutes before my 4 a.m. shift, but something in those muffled tones caught my attention. I recognized Danielle's voice, along with our daughter's, coming from the kitchen. I lay there in our bed, still warm from where Danielle should have been sleeping, and listened. The walls in our modest house were thin, a fact that had annoyed Danielle ever since her promotion at the bank. "Alfred says we could move into his place in Oakwood Heights," Danielle's voice carried through. "It's closer to your school, Aurora." My stomach turned to ice. Alfred. The name had been popping up more frequently in recent months. Just another banking executive, Danielle had said. "But Mom, what about Dad?" Sophia's voice cracked slightly. "Your father." Danielle paused. "I've been preparing for this. Alfred has a wonderful house, and you girls would each have your own bathroom?" I gripped the sheets, my knuckles turning white. Each word felt like a punch to the gut. "I don't want my own bathroom," Aurora protested quietly. "I like sharing with Sophie." "Girls, sometimes adults need to make difficult decisions. Alfred and I have discussed this thoroughly. He's ready to be part of our family." My throat tightened. Thoroughly discussed? While I was working double shifts, hauling garbage to give them a better life, they were planning my replacement? "But Dad's our family," Sophia insisted, though her voice remained soft, hesitant. "Your father will always be your father," Danielle replied, her tone carrying that familiar, dismissive edge I'd grown accustomed to. "But Alfred can provide opportunities that your father... Well, let's be practical about this." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of every early morning, every missed social event, every time Danielle had wrinkled her nose at my work clothes. 15 years of marriage reduced to practicality. Aurora's small voice piped up. "I don't want a stepfather." "You'll feel differently once you get to know him better," Danielle assured them. "Alfred's already asked about taking you both shopping this weekend." The betrayal wasn't just in the words, it was in the planning, the careful orchestration. While I'd been maintaining our routine of family dinners and weekend movies, she'd been grooming our daughters for a new life with another man. Their voices continued, but I couldn't bear to hear more. Each word was another crack in the foundation of everything I'd believed about our life together. Our girls, my beautiful daughters, were trying to defend me in their own gentle way, but they were just kids caught in their mother's orbit. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to my family discuss my replacement over breakfast cereal. I pulled into Joe's Diner, seeking refuge from another silent dinner at home. The neon sign buzzed overhead, casting a warm glow across the nearly empty parking lot. My work boots scraped against the tired linoleum as I made my way to my usual spot at the counter. A flash of red hair caught my attention. Someone new. Not Sandra, the usual evening waitress who'd been serving me coffee for the past 5 years, with barely a word beyond cream or sugar. "Welcome to Joe's. I'm Melody," she approached with a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Coffee to start?" I nodded, managing a weak "thanks" as she poured. The warmth of her presence felt foreign after months of cold shoulders at home. A small figure dotted between the tables, all curls and giggles. "Mama, look what I drew." A little girl, couldn't be more than 6, waved a crayon about 4 feet in the air. "That's beautiful, Jess. Why don't you show our customer?" Melody encouraged. Jessica bounded over, proudly displaying her artwork. It's a garbage truck like the ones that come to our house on Tuesdays. I couldn't help but smile. Well, would you look at that? You even got the lifting arms right. You know about garbage trucks? Her eyes widened with curiosity. I drive one, actually. Instead of the usual wrinkled nose or polite distance I'd grown accustomed to, Jessica's face lit up. Really, that's so cool. Do you get to push all the buttons? Melody returned with my usual order, burger and fries, which I hadn't even needed to request. She must have noticed my regular pattern from previous visits. Sorry about the interruption, she said, but her tone carried no real apology. Jessica's quite the artist, and she's fascinated by big vehicles. For the first time in months, I felt seen. Not as a failure, not as a disappointment, but simply as a person. Jessica peppered me with questions about my job, while Melody kept my coffee cup full, adding her own warm comments between serving other customers. That evening, surrounded by the simple kindness of a mother and daughter who saw no shame in what I did for a living, I remembered what it felt like to breathe freely again. I kept pushing the lawnmower back and forth across our front yard, finding comfort in its monotonous rumble. Each pass felt like therapy, the smell of fresh-cut grass mixing with my sweat. The yard work had always been my thing, my small kingdom where I could lose myself for hours. I noticed Danielle through the corner of my eye, strutting across the driveway in her designer dress, and those ridiculous heels she loved so much. She was trying to get my attention, waving her arms like some fancy traffic conductor. I just pushed the mower harder, pretending the engine was too loud. The grass clippings stuck to my work boots as I made another pass. Danielle planted herself right in my path, her face twisted in that familiar look of annoyance. I swerved around her, leaving a crooked line in the lawn that would bug me later. The truth hit me like a punch to the gut. We'd become strangers, living in the same house. The woman, in expensive clothes, trying to flag me down, wasn't the same person who used to bring me ice-cold lemonade while I did yard work. This Danielle looked at me like I was beneath her, just like she looked at the garden tools in our garage. When her Uber pulled up, all shiny and black, I killed the engine. The sudden silence felt heavy. She didn't even look back as she clicked her way down our driveway. That's when I knew I needed to protect myself. This wasn't just a rough patch anymore. The empty house that weekend echoed with possibilities I didn't want to face. I sat at our kitchen table with my laptop, reading about divorce laws until my eyes burned. My coffee went cold 3 times as I dove deeper into terms like asset division and spousal support. The kicker was learning about alimony. All those years of Danielle's promotions and raises while I kept our city clean, they might actually work in my favor. The thought should have made me feel better, but it just left a bitter taste in my mouth. I never wanted to be the guy calculating how to come out ahead in a divorce, but here I was, planning my defense against the woman who used to be my best friend. I didn't plan on saying yes when Melody asked if I knew anything about baseball. Truth is, I'd coached Little League for years before everything went sideways with Danielle, but something in Jessica's eager face made the words tumble out. You used to coach? That's amazing! Melody's eyes lit up. Jessica's been begging to learn, but I'm hopeless with sports. Before I knew it, I was inviting them to a Mets game. Just a casual afternoon at the ballpark, I told myself. Nothing complicated. The day of the game, Jessica bounced around the parking lot in her oversized Mets cap, firing questions faster than I could answer them. Her energy reminded me of Aurora at that age, back when weekends meant teaching my girls how to hold a bat. We found our seats just as the first pitch sailed across home plate. Jessica perched on the edge of her seat, eyes wide at the crowd's roar. I bought hot dogs and explained the basics: strikes, balls, the infield fly rule. She soaked it all in, hanging on every word. No. Between innings, Melody caught me up on her life. Single mom, working doubles at the diner, trying to give Jessica everything she could. No complaints, just facts. The way she handled it all with such grace hit something deep in my chest. "Dad used to play with me," Jessica announced during the 7th inning stretch, ketchup smeared across her chin. "Before he went away." Melody's smile faltered for a split second. I jumped in with an offer to teach Jessica some batting basics, steering clear of that particular conversation. The relief in Melody's eyes said enough. The Mets lost, but Jessica declared it the best day ever. On the walk back to our cars, she spotted a flyer for Little League signups. "Mom, look, can I, please?" Melody hesitated. "Sweetheart, I work weekends. I could help." The words came out before I could stop them. "They're looking for coaches. I've got the experience." Jessica's hopeful face, Melody's surprised smile, something shifted in that moment, like puzzle pieces clicking into place. The following Saturday, I found myself back on the baseball diamond, surrounded by kids in oversized helmets. Jessica proudly wore number 7, just like her favorite Mets player. Teaching them the fundamentals brought back memories of coaching Aurora's team, but this time felt different. These kids weren't looking for a perfect coach, they just wanted someone to believe in them. Melody watched from the bleachers when her schedule allowed, bringing water bottles and orange slices. She never missed Jessica's moments at bat, cheering just as loud for the strikes as the hits. After one particularly chaotic practice, I caught myself actually laughing as Jessica demonstrated her victory dance for the 3rd time. The heavy weight I'd been carrying since Danielle left felt lighter somehow. Not gone, but manageable. "You're good with them," Melody said quietly, helping me pack up the equipment. "The kids, they trust you." I shrugged, embarrassed by the compliment. But watching Jessica chase her teammates around the bases, shrieking with laughter, I had to admit, it felt good to be needed again, to have a purpose beyond just getting through each day. Few days later, I organized barbecue. I watched helplessly as my daughters stormed off, leaving behind half-eaten burgers and a mess of tension hanging in the backyard air. Melody sat frozen at the picnic table, her hand protectively wrapped around Jessica's shoulder. The little redhead's eyes were wide, darting between me and the path where Sophia and Aurora had just disappeared. The whole thing had gone sideways the moment we sat down. Aurora locked on to Melody like a missile, firing off questions about her job, her past, why she was divorced. Each word dripped with teenage venom. Sophia, usually the diplomatic one, joined in with subtle jabs about age differences and questionable timing. I tried to keep my cool, focusing on flipping burgers and pretending the interrogation wasn't happening, but when Aurora made a snide comment about waitressing being a starter job, something in me snapped. "That's enough," I slammed the spatula down. "You two want to talk about timing? Let's talk about how quickly you jumped on board with your mother's plans to leave me. Not a peep of protest there, was there?" Sophia's face went white. Aurora's jaw clenched. "You didn't even question it, just packed up your rooms and picked out new furniture for the fancy apartment she promised you. But God forbid I try to move forward with someone who actually sees me as more than a paycheck." The words came out like bullets and I regretted them instantly. Sophia's eyes welled up and Aurora grabbed her sister's arm, yanking her toward the house. The screen doors slammed behind them with a crack that felt final. Now I stood there, smoke from the abandoned grill stinging my eyes, wondering if I'd just nuked what was left of my relationship with my kids. Melody's presence, which had felt so right just hours ago, now seemed like a stark reminder of everything that was falling apart. Jessica's small voice broke the silence. Are they coming back? I didn't have an answer for her. Hell, I didn't have answers for any of this. Few days later, it finally happened. I stood alone in the kitchen, my hands trembling as I gripped the counter. The silence upstairs was deafening, broken only by muffled sobs from the girls' rooms. Each tear they shed felt like a knife in my chest, but I couldn't back down. Not this time. I climbed the stairs, my work boots heavy against each step. Outside Aurora's door, I heard Sophia's voice trying to comfort her sister. The sound of their unified grief twisted my gut, but it also reminded me why I had to do this. Aurora's door was locked when I tried the handle. Girls, we need to talk. Go away, Aurora's voice cracked through the door. Listen, I know this is hard, but... Hard? You just threw Mom out. Sophia's voice joined in. I leaned my forehead against the doorframe. Your mother's been seeing someone else. A man named Alfred. I found out a while ago. The room went quiet. Then footsteps approached, and the lock clicked. Aurora stood there, her face streaked with tears. Sophia right behind her. What about us? Aurora's voice was small, vulnerable. You'll always have me. Always. But I can't stay married to someone who doesn't want to be here anymore. Did you even try to fix things? Sophia demanded. Marriage takes two people wanting to make it work. Your mother made her choice with Alfred, now I'm making mine with the divorce. Aurora launched herself at me, wrapping her arms around my waist. Sophia stayed back, arms crossed, but I could see her walls crumbling. I won't force you to choose sides. You can see her whenever you want. But I can't pretend anymore, and neither should you. When did you find out? Sophia finally asked. Long enough to know it wasn't just a mistake. Long enough to know she isn't coming back. Moving in with Melody and Jessica happened gradually, like watching the seasons change. First it was just staying over a few nights, then leaving some clothes, until one day I realized my toothbrush had permanently migrated to their bathroom counter. The transition felt natural. Jessica's excited squeals whenever I walked through the door made the weight on my shoulders lighter. She'd run up, wrapping her tiny arms around my legs, red curls bouncing as she begged me to push her on the swings in their backyard. I still had tough days at work, dealing with judgmental looks from people who thought they were better than a garbage man. But coming home to Melody's understanding smile changed everything. She never made me feel less than. If anything, she appreciated the stability my job provided, having struggled herself as a single mom. We developed our own little routines. Sunday mornings meant pancakes with Jessica, who insisted on adding food coloring to make them magical. Melody would join us after her morning yoga, stealing bites from my plate while pretending not to notice Jessica sneaking extra chocolate chips. The pain of my daughter's betrayal didn't vanish. Some nights I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how Sophia and Aurora could cut me out so completely. But Melody would sense these moments, wordlessly sliding her hand into mine, anchoring me to the present. Jessica helped heal parts of me I didn't know were broken. Her simple acceptance, the way she'd crawl into my lap with a storybook or ask me to check for monsters under her bed, reminded me that being a father was still part of who I was. She never saw me as just a garbage man or a failed dad. To her, I was simply Bill, the guy who made funny voices during bedtime stories and knew how to fix her broken toys. Our home wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Melody's vintage posters mixed with Jessica's crayon masterpieces on the walls. My old leather recliner found its place next to their floral couch. We planted a small leather recliner in the backyard, Jessica naming each tomato plant like a pet. The simplicity of our life together became my sanctuary. No pretenses, no judgments. Just three people building something genuine. Melody understood my rough edges, my sarcastic humor, my early morning work schedule. She'd leave coffee ready in the thermos, sometimes with little notes that made me roll my eyes but secretly smile. Living with them taught me that family isn't always about blood. It's about the small moments, helping Jessica with her homework, watching bad movies with Melody while sharing takeout, or all three of us attempting to bake cookies and making a magnificent mess of the kitchen. These ordinary moments held more truth than all the forced family dinners I'd endured in my previous life. Few weeks later, I sat in my favorite lawn chair, trying to find peace in the evening silence. My thoughts kept drifting to the girls, to the empty rooms upstairs that used to be filled with their laughter. The grass needed mowing, but I couldn't bring myself to care anymore. A rustling from the bushes caught my attention. Aurora emerged from the shadows, her face streaked with tears, her usual confident demeanor shattered. My heart stopped. She practically fell into my arms, her whole body shaking. "Dad," her voice cracked, barely above a whisper. I held her tight, feeling her tears soak through my shirt. The pieces started falling into place. Her recent withdrawal, the way she'd been avoiding family gatherings, the strange texts she'd dodge whenever I visited. My blood turned to ice when she finally told me about Alfred's lingering touches, his accidental walks past the bathroom, the way he'd corner her when her mom wasn't around. She'd revealed he'd done the same to Sophia, though my eldest had been too ashamed to speak up. I drove straight to Danielle's house, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, found her in the kitchen, sipping wine with that smug bastard like nothing was wrong. The look on her face when I confronted her, dismissive, almost bored, made me want to put my fist through a wall. "You're being ridiculous," she said. "Alfred would never—" "Our daughters, Danielle. Our fucking daughters." The next few days were a blur of police stations and protective orders. I helped Aurora set up her phone to record, documenting every inappropriate comment, every unwanted advance. The evidence piled up quickly, too quickly. Each new recording made me sick to my stomach. The arrest happened on a Tuesday. I made sure the girls were at my place when the police cars pulled up to Danielle's house. Watched from across the street as they led Alfred out in handcuffs, his perfectly pressed suit wrinkled, his composure finally cracking. The courtroom was cold and sterile. Danielle sat behind Alfred's lawyer, refusing to look at our daughters as they testified. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped against the wooden barrier, her face a mask of denial, even as the recordings played through the speakers. Each tap felt like a betrayal, each avoided glance another nail in the coffin of whatever relationship she still had with our girls. When the verdict came down, Aurora squeezed my hand so tight it hurt. I didn't care. I'd take all the pain in the world if it meant keeping my daughters safe. Not long after the girls moved with me. Through the kitchen window, I watched Aurora and Sophia help Jessica with her jump rope in the backyard. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the grass, and Jessica's giggles carried through the screen door. It wasn't always this peaceful. Those first few weeks after the girls moved back were like walking on eggshells. Aurora spent most of her time in her room, headphones clamped over her ears. Sophia buried herself in books, avoiding eye contact during dinner. The silence at the table felt heavier than any garbage truck I'd ever loaded. But Jessica changed everything. Melody started bringing her over more often, and that kid had a way of breaking down walls without even trying. One morning, I came down to find Aurora teaching Jessica how to make pancakes. Flour covered every surface, and the pancakes looked more like abstract art, but their laughter filled the kitchen. Sophia took longer to come around. She'd sit on the porch steps after school, lost in thought. Then one day Jessica plopped down next to her with a coloring book. Before long, Sophia was helping her stay inside the lines, then reading her stories, then helping with simple math homework. The transformation happened in small moments. Aurora stopped slamming her door. Sophia started joining us for movie nights again. We weren't perfect. There were still arguments and tense silences, but watching them now, with Jessica skipping between them as they counted her jumps, I saw my family healing. Jessica tripped on the rope and Aurora caught her before she fell. Again. Jessica demanded, and both my girls laughed, positioning themselves on either end of the rope. The sound made my chest tight. It reminded me of when they were younger, before everything went sideways. "Arian!" Jessica called out, her red curls bouncing with each jump. Sophia adjusted her grip on the rope, sharing a smile with her sister. That smile meant more than any words could say. They weren't just tolerating each other anymore, they were sisters again. Every evening, the three of them sprawled across the living room floor, surrounded by Jessica's toys or homework or craft supplies. The TV stayed off more often than not, replaced by conversations and shared jokes I didn't always understand. But I understood the healing I saw in their faces, the way they leaned on each other, literally and figuratively. Jessica brought out a gentleness in my girls I thought they'd lost. She didn't know about the hurt and betrayal. She just loved them purely and simply, and somehow that love helped bridge the gaps between us all. Years later, as Sophia started down the aisle, the faint sound of her heels tapping on the stone floor echoed through the church. I tried not to blink too much, afraid I'd miss something. Like, if I looked away for even a second, somehow the moment would rewrite itself. She looked grown. Not in that she's 16 and thinks she's an adult way, but really grown. Graceful. Absolutely confident. Her arm was steady in mine, but I felt like I was the one leaning on her, like she was carrying me forward instead of the other way around. There was something surreal about all of it. I mean, how the hell did we get here? I thought back to the nights I'd spent pacing the living room when she was a fresh 16, barely speaking to me, locked away in her hoodie cocoon. Back when saying, "Pass me the salt," felt like an argument waiting to happen. And now here she was, magnetic in her white gown, looking at me with the kind of warmth that nearly knocked the wind out of me, like she saw me fully. For my flaws, my failures, and not only forgave them, but loved me even more because of them. The church smelled faintly of old wood polish and flowers. Sophia had been very particular about the arrangements, because of course she had. She inherited that perfectionist streak from her mum, though she'd never admit it. Danielle was there, sitting in the back like some ghost half drifted into reality. She'd looked good, put together in that way she always was, but distant. Her gaze didn't linger on Sophia or me. She stared at the floral pew arrangements like they might have the answers to some unspoken question. I didn't let myself look too long, though. Couldn't afford to let those old feelings bubble. Up front, I caught Melody out of the corner of my eye. Her red hair caught the sunlight through the stained glass, giving her this kind of quiet brilliance. Jessica was next to her, practically bouncing. She didn't quite get all the weight and seriousness of the day. She was mostly excited about the cake and dancing later, but honestly, that made me love her even more. Melody had her hand wrapped around Jessica's like she was afraid to lose her if she let go, and seeing them there sent that hum of peace running straight through me. Sophia squeezed my arm when we got closer to the altar, the kind of squeeze that felt like a thank you for everything and an "I'll be okay" rolled into one. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed the story, remember to like, subscribe, and comment on the video for more stories like this. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an update. If you have any similar stories to share, leave them in the comments and we'll make sure to bring them to life. Thanks for watching.